right, welcome to our second annual US-India conference. We're so glad that you're all here today. We'll just begin very, very shortly. We have some of our guests still arriving. Okay, good morning. The theme of this conference is unlocking growth opportunities for US firms in the subcontinent. The Indian subcontinent is the next biggest thing in the global economy. India is already the fastest growing large economy in the world, and the economies of Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Nepal are reviving up as well. The subcontinent has everything needed to grow fast for many decades: population, consumption, culture, technology, and management skills, and a democratic, law-based governance system that propels this forward. There are enormous opportunities for investment and trade in the areas of energy, defense, digital technologies, education, healthcare, transportation, and the governments are inviting foreign capital and know-how. However, to unlock the growth opportunities in the subcontinent requires US firms to raise their competitiveness in the region. Chinese firms are emerging as potent rivals, even as the Japanese, Koreans, and European firms are consolidating their presence. The firms that align with the national economic priorities and the local market realities will prosper. US firms will and could also help in the government in making it easy to move capital, technology, and people both ways, so that they do not lose out on firms and from countries with more open economies. It's a pleasure for me to invite, on behalf of AIMA, All India Management Association, all of you today. And to begin our program, there's a welcome address here from our new Chancellor, Chancellor Carol Christ. She began her term as the 11th Chancellor of the University of California, Berkeley, on July 1, 2017. A celebrated scholar of Victorian literature, Christ is also well known as an advocate for quality, accessible public higher education, a proponent of the value of broad education in liberal arts and sciences, and a champion of women's issues and diversity on college campuses. Chris spent more than 3 decades as a professor and administrator at the University of California, Berkeley, before serving as the president of Smith College, one of country's most distinguished liberal arts colleges from 2002 to 2013. She returned to Berkeley in January of 2015 to direct the campus's Center for Studies in Higher Education and was appointed interim executive vice chancellor and provost in April 2016 before being named chancellor in March 2017. Prior to joining Smith College, Christ served as UC Berkeley's executive vice chancellor and provost from 1994 to 2000. During her 6 years as campus's top academic officer, she sharpened Berkeley's intellectual focus, strengthening many of the institution's top-rated departments in humanities and sciences, as well as advancing major initiatives in areas including neurosciences and bioengineering. Chris received her bachelor's degree from Douglas College and her MPH and PhD from Yale University. She is a member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and the American Philosophical Society. It gives me much pleasure to invite Chancellor Christ to come and open the session.
Thank you. I'm delighted to welcome you to Berkeley this rather foggy morning. I'm sure the sun will come out in the course of your conference. UC Berkeley is happy to host the second US-India conference in the Silicon Valley in collaboration with AIMA, the All India Management Association, sponsored both by the Garwood Center for Corporate Innovation and the Haas School of Business. It's my hope that this conference will strengthen bilateral relations between our university and India in the years to come. This conference comes at a very important moment. India has the fastest growing economy in the world. At the same time, the American technology sector and the American energy sector both continue to grow. Both of these developments increase the demand for well-educated talent and innovative research. Thus, this is a perfect time to strengthen bilateral relationships through mentorship programs, through new partnerships, and through educational collaborations, all of which involve students and faculty on relevant research projects that are supported both by India's government and by prominent educational institutions in India. I'm very pleased with the Garwood Center's engagement in open innovation research. It's creating relevant business models in India for global brands to expand their markets. 70% of the population in India still live in villages that are isolated from the resources that cities enjoy. Professors Henry Chesbrough and Solomon Darwin's research focusing on creating smart villages, villages that have access to the technology resources that cities enjoy, offers a huge untapped market both for US corporations and for Indian companies to create value for the whole ecosystem. We're happy that the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh in the upcoming World Economic Forum will showcase your efforts in creating smart villages as a model for developing new opportunities between rural economies and emerging markets. This is a real benefit to the neglected majority of the world's population who don't have access to global markets. Furthermore, through events like the US-India Conference, we provide an opportunity for those in our Bay Area Silicon Valley ecosystem to learn about India's growth and development and the potential they have for participating in and supporting India's future. We direct the educational and research endeavors of our universities toward both the present and the future. Each year, we send superbly educated students equipped with the tools for innovation into the workforce. At the same time, the basic and applied research conducted in our academic laboratories is building the foundation for continued innovation. I wish AIMA and the Haas School of Business success in many joint projects in the future, and I hope you have a really wonderful and productive conference that will be the foundation for many collaborations. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chancellor Christ, for coming and for those remarks. Very inspirational. Next welcome address is from Richard Lyons, a famous dean known for innovation, leading through innovation. He coined the phrase here. All of our faculty are very much focused on that. And I would want him to come and inspire us. Richard Lyons is the 14th dean of the Haas School of Business, UC Berkeley, and holds the Bank of America Dean's Chair. Prior to becoming dean in 2008, he's served as the Chief Learning Officer at Goldman Sachs in New York, a position he held since 2006. As Chief Learning Officer, Rich was responsible for leadership development among the firm's managing directors. Prior to Goldman Sachs, Rich served as acting dean at the Haas School of Business from 2004 to 2005, and as executive associate dean and Sylvian Coleman Professor of Finance from 2005 to 2006. He received his bachelor's with highest honors from UC Berkeley in finance and his PhD from MIT in economics. Before coming to Haas, Professor Lyons spent 6 years on the faculty of Columbia Business School. His teaching expertise is in international finance. It gives me pleasure to welcome Rich Lyons.
Thank you. Welcome to all of you. I want to echo what Carol Christ said. I also want to thank Rekha for our wonderful partnership with AIMA and Solomon for all the wonderful leadership that he has shown. Let me say a few things about the relationship between this business school and India in my welcoming remarks, and then just say a couple things about what does the frontier of business education look like? What are we thinking about right now? I won't spend a lot of time on that last topic, but I thought that might be a way to kind of bring you some inside baseball, as we say in the U.S. The relationship between the business school and India, it's long and it's deep. We have just, for example, like many top business schools, we have 4 separate alumni chapters in India. We have one naturally in Bangalore, in Mumbai, in Chennai, and in Delhi. If you would like to know the students, the alums of ours who run those 4 chapters, for example, you can find that easily on our website if you want to get some connectivity into the Berkeley Haas alums in India. If you just go to our main webpage at Berkeley Haas and you go to the alumni tab, you will find those names and emails pretty easily. We have a lot of connection to people whose families originally hailed from India, not surprisingly. The sort of longtime board member Arun Sarin, many of you will know or do know Arun, right? AirTouch and Vodafone, and obviously a major leader in his own right, and still, of course, remains very, very connected to India. I guess not a full generation. I'm just pulling out a few of the names, but Shantanu Narayan is one of our alums. He is the CEO of Adobe, an absolutely terrific human being, for those of you that don't know him personally. More recently, again, just kind of pulling out an example, a fellow by the name of Varun Mehta, who was in our part-time MBA program, just sold his company, Nimble Storage, to HP Enterprise for some $1 billion. That's a good exit. And we're very happy to have alumni that are so successful. Anyway, so it is not surprising that we have a lot of alumni whose families, as I mentioned, hail from the region, from the country. What else is going on in this area? You know, I mentioned that Varun went through our evening weekend MBA program. We're a business school that has 6 degree programs. Arguably our very, very strongest one, the one that has ranked #1 in its category for 5 straight years, is that evening weekend MBA program. And there are so many technology people in the Bay Area that want to keep doing technology and want to get a great MBA on the weekends or in the evenings. And there's a good chunk of them that come from the Indian subcontinent. So that's another set of sort of connection that we have with the region and with the people. And then the last example that I would mention, Berkeley, you know this, but Berkeley is so strong in the STEM fields. We just launched a brand new dual degree undergrad program with our wonderful College of Engineering. It's called Management, Entrepreneurship, and Technology. We just launched it. You arrive at Berkeley, you are admitted to both the College of Engineering and the business school. And many of the great business schools of the world don't have an undergraduate business school. They can't do this, right? It's kind of nice to have a product in the market that many of your competitors can't offer. And we got 2,500 applications in the first year for this program for 30 slots. We ended up bringing in 40 absolutely stunningly good young people, and many of them, their families hail from India at some point. So that connectivity goes on. We will continue it. It's part of what makes this institution as sort of fit and effective as it is. A couple of quick comments as part of this welcome. I just thought, you know, we are part of management education. We are educators. What's at the cutting edge? Real quickly. You know, when you think about a business school and you think about, look, if somebody comes here and wants to learn some finance and learn some accounting, do we do that well? We have to do that well, but that's as they call table stakes. You got to do that well. It's kind of a commodity, actually. If you actually say, you know, does your core finance class look that much different than the other top business schools? Probably not all that much different. So then you say, well, what's one higher level in terms of the value proposition? Well, these sort of cognitive skills. Are they better critical thinkers at the end? Are they better systems thinkers? Are they better creative thinkers? Are they better integrative thinkers? Yes, they better be. That's part of what we're doing. That stuff is much less commoditized. But is there something above that? I think there is, and that's where I want to close my comments. You know, the best business schools are the best business schools because literally they transform people. We use that word from time to time, but we got to mean it. We got to be able to say, here's what I mean. So what's the transformation part of getting a great MBA? Let me give you an example. Students will come to this business school, this geography, right? This Silicon Valley, this Bay Area, all that's going on. They will take, this is just an example, they will go through an immersion experience in entrepreneurship, a startup experience, for example. And our cafe is right next door here. They'll come up to me in the cafe and they'll tug on my coat and they'll say, you know, when I got here a year ago, starting a company, they do that. Other people do that. Now, I do that. I get it. I might not choose to do it right out of school, but I get it. What's that worth? That's an identity change. That's an identity change. Students graduate from great business schools and they think, and they are right, that they're more confident. But in fact, they see identities in themselves they couldn't see before. What's that worth? That's transformative. Great education gets great by identity making. That's a really important part of what we do. We don't just transfer knowledge and do research. Second example, and then I'll stop. You know, students, when we talk about the higher order stuff, we all talk about leadership. Yeah, leadership. Yeah. What? Okay, so talk to me about leadership. How are they transformed in terms of leadership? Here's an example. You know, as human beings, we seek meaning in our lives, in our experiences, right? Our families, our friends, our work, our church, wherever it is. We are all purpose consumers, every single one of us. But there is a point in your life, and we do our very best to make this happen while they are here. There's a point in your life where you realize it is not enough for me to just feed on the purpose of the great people and institutions around me. It's partly my responsibility to instill a larger sense of purpose in the people around me. We call that transformation the transformation from purpose consumer to purpose creator. When in your life do you make that transition? That's a pretty fundamental one. It's partly my responsibility to instill a larger sense of purpose in the people around me. That's exciting stuff. Great leaders are great at it. Most people haven't thought deeply enough to even put a name to it. We put a name to it, we do our best to deliver it. Those are some of the frontiers of management education. Welcome to Berkeley, welcome to Haas. Get just as much out of this day and as much out of each other as you can while you're here. Okay, thank you.
All right, now it's good to hear from my good friend that I've been working with for a long time, the Director General of AIMA, Rekha, Sethi, and I have go long ways back. We have been, she has been a good friend of UC Berkeley, and she brings in a lot of executives here on different occasions. And our engagement, our friendship has been very valued. And so that's why this came about, because one day she said, why don't we do something like this? And we pulled it off last year, and this is our second year. And I would like her to come and say a few introductory remarks. Rekha.
Rich, you're a hard act to follow, so I'm just going to stick to my script. Ambassador Venkatesan Ashok, Mr. Shashi Tharoor, Mr. Sunil Kant Munjal, my friend Rich Lyons, Mr. Mohandas Pai, Sanjay Poonen, Solomon Darwin, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for joining us today, and especially a big thanks to those who made it here by 9:15, despite all the traffic. This is the second US-India conference we are doing jointly with Berkeley, and it gives me great pleasure to be here once again and stand in front of you and say good morning in this very beautiful hall, which I hope is going to fill as we go along. It's already more than half full. Many thanks, Rich, for your warm welcome and for all the support that you've given us. We couldn't have done this without you. And it's a great partnership and a very special relationship AIMA shares with UC Berkeley and especially with Haas. So thank you. Ambassador Venkatesan Ashok, it is a privilege to have you with us. Thank you so much for all your support and for being a partner with us in this conference. And thank you to your wonderful staff also. Mr. Tharoor, you've come the long way via Australia. Thank you so much. We really appreciate the effort you've made to be with us today. Thank you. We look forward to hearing you later in the afternoon. Mr. Munjal, as president of AIMA, you've inspired us through the Diamond Jubilee year, and your leadership has enabled us to strengthen our ties with global thought leaders. This is not the first conference we have done this year under Mr. Munjal's leadership. We have been to Dubai, we have been to Thailand, we have been to Switzerland twice. So thank you for taking AIMA global. I hope you'll continue working with us on our international footprint. My grateful thanks to the AIMA CEO's delegation. All of them have made it, and they are here in the front row. We have had a great time in the last 3 days where we visited some of the most iconic companies in the Silicon Valley. And it was great to have all of you here. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for speaking at this conference and talking to the delegates today. I'd also like to thank our US speakers, whose presence in the conference will go a long way in strengthening Indo-US ties. Solomon, you have been a great friend and guide. You've anchored many of AIMA's programs in the US, and you're once again a key reason why we are here at Berkeley today. Thank you and your wonderful team for all that you do for us. Sanjay, it's a pleasure to have you with us, a veteran of the Silicon Valley. You have the inside track on the economy of technology, which is a key focus area for the conference today. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, just a few words about AIMA. We are the apex body for management in the country with over 30,000 members through 66 local management associations who are affiliated to AIMA all over India. AIMA works with business, government, and academic institutions to promote excellence in practice and learning of management. This conference is part of AIMA's Diamond Jubilee Year celebrations. Since it was founded in 1957, AIMA has built bridges between the Indian and global fraternities. The organization has created many platforms for thought leaders to come together and share knowledge and know-how. AIMA partners outstanding international institutions such as, of course, UC Berkeley, Imperial College, St. Gallen University, Horaces, the World Bank, and the Association of Asian Management Organizations to promote international cooperation. In the 60 years of its existence, AIMA has established itself as the avenue of choice for distribution of new management thinking and practices in India. AIMA has developed a very special relationship with the Silicon Valley. For the last 6 years, as Solomon was just mentioning, we have conducted the prized Global Advanced Management Program in the Valley with the help of Professor Solomon Darwin. It is a popular program among India's senior executives as they get a unique exposure in the world's greatest laboratory of innovation. The interaction between the visiting business leaders and the companies in the Valley deepens the Indo-US economic relations and creates new leads for collaboration. Ladies and gentlemen, India has been a happy destination for American investors for decades. Many American companies and brands are household names in India. Still, they have only scratched the surface so far. Indian economy has only just started growing. The bigger opportunities are opening up only now as India moves up into a higher orbit of investment and consumption. India offers fantastic growth opportunities for American companies across the board in energy, transportation, defense, pharmaceuticals, finance, education, and of course, digital technologies. India is a very attractive destination because of its already advanced industrial, financial, and technological know-how. It is much easier for the new US entrants to do business in India and for the existing companies to expand. During the past couple of decades, India's IT companies have become integrated with the US economy, and the good experience can be extended to new areas such as robotics, artificial intelligence, digital enterprises, green energy, and defense. We are fortunate to have prominent thought leaders from both the countries with us today, and I'm grateful to all our speakers for joining us. AIMA is privileged to have an excellent partner in the Haas School of Business, UC Berkeley, and this conference is an outcome of our joint efforts. AIMA is also grateful to the Consulate General of India, San Francisco, TAI Silicon Valley, and Institute for South Asian Studies, UC Berkeley, for their support in organizing this conference. I take this opportunity to also thank our sponsor, the Hero Enterprise, for making it possible to organize this conference at this large scale. With these words, it is my pleasure to invite Solomon back on the dais to introduce the next speaker. Thank you.
Rekha, you're so proper, you put me to shame.
Thank you so much. Those
Nice sentiments expressed for the Haas School and our partnership. Really appreciate this. Our next speaker is a phenomenal friend of mine. Got to appreciate him. He runs one of the most innovative companies in the Silicon Valley. I had the privilege of inviting him to a private dinner with the chief minister a couple of months ago, and he not only came and participated, he said, you know, next time I want to host, my company wants to host the chief minister at my company. And I said, why is that? He said, you know, we are one of the largest innovative firms in the Valley with a lot of Indians working in it. Maybe that's why it's innovative. But anyway, and he's here, and I love this company. Henry Chesborough is in the audience. Both he and I had executives from VMware participate in our classrooms. And the way this company innovates is it's from a cultural perspective. They have 5 elements of open culture. And our students learned a lot from it. In order for innovation to happen, you need to have the culture that fosters it. One is, we call them the 5 E's. Exchange is a culture that fosters exchange, fosters sharing. The second E is experimentation, permission to explore and fail. The third is enablement, providing training and tools, equipping people. Empowerment, granting authority. And last E is encouragement, recognizing the accomplishment and celebrating it. And there's another company here called Kaiser Permanente. Every Friday is an innovation day where they celebrate the best ideas within. So this open culture fosters this open innovation, really prevails in this environment. And Sanjay Poonen is going to come and speak to us. He's the Chief Operating Officer of this wonderful company, innovative company. Please come and deliver your remarks.
Thank you very much, Professor Solomon and Dean Richard, Chancellor Carroll, and honored panelists. I thank you for inviting a few of us corporate types to this honored event. I feel like my IQ is especially low when I come to an incredible academic environment, and you've got great government professionals and leaders, diplomats. Hopefully, what I'd like to do in the next 10 or 15 minutes is give you a little bit of a sense of my story and why there's a special bond between the Silicon Valley and India. I grew up, I'm from Kerala. Anybody here? We got a few Malayalis in the house? Okay, good. The great state of Kerala, I think, has great food, great people, and I think they've usually voted often socialists and communists also into power. So there's something in common between all of that. But nonetheless, I grew up in Bangalore, and just a short view of my story. I at age 17 and 18, just like many of the high school students in Bangalore and any other big city, you have two tracks, at least in the 1980s. I graduated in 1987. You become a doctor or you become an engineer. I think now the world has become a little bit more diverse in India to those two professions, but I wanted to be an engineer. My mom was a doctor. We grew up in a pretty poor middle-class family, and my mom's path out of her poverty and her life and one of 9 children was to study. So the instinct that was taught me very early in life was if you had a good education and you worked hard, anything was possible. But I remember I was studying for the IIT exams. That's what I wanted to do, be an engineer. I got into IIT Madras, and my uncle, who had moved to the US and was living here, said, listen, there are a bunch of colleges that also accept you as an undergrad. It's very rare. Most people who've come here for education as a graduate student. So I applied to a bunch of colleges here with the hope that I couldn't afford it, but maybe I'd get a scholarship from some university. I applied to every school and got rejected. I didn't apply to Berkeley. Maybe I should have. But I applied to every school. And then this one small school that I'd never heard of, okay, in New Hampshire called Dartmouth, accepted me for computer science. I had no idea where New Hampshire was. I'd never been to the United States. And you know, there's a big difference in weather between Bangalore and Hanover, New Hampshire, okay? So I learned very quickly, and probably regretted my first year, that I had made the decision to come here. I decided to come here purely because it was a good computer science program. I wanted to do computer science. But within 3 or 4 years, I got adjusted, and the human spirit just adjusts very quickly. Weather's the easiest part to adjust to. But I remember one small thing. I'll share this with you because there's such a big difference in our cultures. Today, people take many of these things for granted. I remember I'd never heard of this thing called Halloween, okay? We don't do that in India, but I remember the first time I was living off campus in my junior year, and these kids came up to the door. I was living with a bunch of American roommates, and they mumbled something, okay? I had no idea what they were saying, and they put a big bag of chocolates in front of me saying something, right? They were saying trick or treats, but I had no idea. So what does an ignorant person do? I put my hand right in and took some chocolates. Because that's what I expected people did. When you put a bunch of... My roommate behind me started laughing, and the kid's mom was standing at the end of the driveway, said, these guys are idiots. They thought I was playing a prank on them. But that's the way in which much of us have sort of come to the country, right? And I made the mistake of staying on the East Coast. I went to Harvard Business School for my MBA. I probably should have come here to the West because it's much better weather. And now I have been, in the last 25 years in IT, most of my career at 2 companies that are the leaders in the software industry, one in applications and infrastructure, SAP, a German software company. I spent most of my life there as president of one of the big divisions, and now I'm the chief operating officer of VMware. VMware is a very special story. It's the 5th largest software company, born out of some research at Stanford, and the fastest growing software company. We're now a 45 billion market cap company. And what we have done is revolutionize what's called the data center. And I'll talk a little bit about it, but much more what I want to talk to you are some of the things that you can all take away as experiences that I think are common, irrespective of what industry. This is not a pitch for VMware. In my spare time, I try to be a better dad and a better husband. I'm the father of 3 children, 11-year-old girl, Sophia, and twin 7-year-old boys, Alex and Jason. And my favorite time is telling them a story at 8 o'clock in the evening. And I try not to use PowerPoint when I'm doing that. Stories are better told without this is a good crutch to get the picture across to many of you. I think what's very special, as Professor Solomon talked about the Silicon Valley, and I think connects us to Bangalore or to Beijing or any other part of India that's innovating is innovation. And when you look at what's happening now, I came back after business school in 1997 here because the Silicon Valley was starting to really boom. I came here in 1991 as an undergrad because I'd heard of this company called Apple and I wanted to work there. My first job was at Apple. And today, of course, the notion of startups and unicorns and all of that stuff, the wealth creation is a side effect of, I think, a significant part of what technology has done to create a hub of innovation. And innovation has just one key thing inside it, and that's ideas. Ideas win. Ultimately, that can create wealth, but this is now the grand. I think the same thing is happening in India, whether it's in the private sector and the public sector, and it's very encouraging. I have spent a significant amount of my time investing in Bangalore, in Hyderabad, in Pune. We have a significant part of our operations there, both at SAP and in our sector, one of the largest employers in India. And I get to contrast often the smart engineers that we hire in India and China and Sofia. And I think what's special about India is that same strand of innovation. Beyond innovation, there's certain things that tie us together, right? Education's a very high priority. My path out of poverty was education. What allowed me to come to the United States on a scholarship, there's no way I could have afforded this. 98% of my tuition was paid, and the last 2% I had to work in a dining hall was education. And I found when I got here, in my first year, just because of the preparation I had studying for the IITs, I was able to compete with third-year level people at Dartmouth College, an Ivy League college. It's the quality of education that we have that continues to distinguish us, and many of you are proud recipients of that. The ethic, the work ethic, is something that also, I think, stands out. I'm not singling out just India. There are other countries, but I think many of us who've come out of poor circumstances know that we've done that through hard work. English, I think it's a key factor in which I often look to hire engineers. The communication barrier, even though it's 12 and a half hours, 13 and a half hour difference, the fact that we speak the language helps us often, even as we think about technology and hiring engineers there. And of course, key things to entrepreneurs is the ability to take risk. As a result, I mean, I'm just showing a few of the photos of some of the Silicon Valley and related tech people, probably Satya Nadella, Shantanu Narayan was mentioned. I just had a coffee yesterday with Sundar Pichai, who's CEO of Google. Many of these folks have done incredibly well. And now I think it's amazing that 2 out of the 3 large market cap companies in the world are run by Indians, Microsoft and Google. And that's an amazing tribute to our country. And if you look at, this is just a small sampling. I had a few other folks who are commonly seen on TV, like Fareed Zakaria. It's very proud for me when I see these folks, and I think they're paving the way for a global economy that's going to be run often by people from our country. And many of these folks have these things that are common in them. There's one thing that I will highlight that I think is increasingly going to become necessary among our leaders, that's humility. There's a lot of smart people in the Silicon Valley. There are a lot of hardworking people. But I will tell you, there's also a lot of hubris in the Silicon Valley. It's unfortunate. And you can just look around many of the great companies and you see arrogance. And I think there's a new era of level 5 leaders that will stand out because of their humility. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. If you go back to the history of time, this was actually a good chart that my team got me for The Economist. And you go back to 180, you'll see the world was primarily India and China. This is the proportional GDP across the various different countries way back 2,000 plus years ago. And then over time, the blue is India, the light blue is China, and the rest are other various companies. All the way to like 1800s, it's like India and China, okay? India and China in relative GDP. And then something starts to change in the 1900s, okay? And I believe what's going to start happening 2014 onwards is it's going to come back to this key part. And this is a prediction of kind of what the forecasted economy is going to look like in 2030. If you asked this question in the 1940s and 50s, people talked about 3 countries: United States, United Kingdom, and Soviet Union. I have nothing against the United Kingdom. I have nothing against Soviet Union. But I think the conversation for the next 20, 30 years is going to be the United States, India, and China. And it's not, for me, many people make it an India versus a China. I think if all three of these countries can have a significant play in a partnership model to drive the future of the world, great things are going to happen. Okay? It's not one versus the other. There's too much of the one versus the other discussion happening, whether it's US versus China or India versus China. We've got to make this one where the triumvirate of us continue. The economy, what excites me about the economy is certainly the growth, and the government leaders here who are representing, I'm looking forward to hearing their comments. The more that we can help the country grow in that GDP growth rate makes it an attractive place for companies like VMware to invest. And the investments that are made not just in education, but also in infrastructure. We'd love to see the same thing that's happened in the telecom and the high-tech industry happen in road infrastructure and things of that kind, which I know is a priority of the government. And I think that as these new innovations, see, one of the things that happened when I studied was I skipped the entire mainframe era, and I went right to client server as a computer science major. Okay. The new generation gets the chance to skip even client server and go right to mobile and cloud. And I think that's going to start happening in countries like India if you look at the millennial generation and where they're headed. Today for us at VMware, we have a significant investment in India. It is our largest offshore engineering investment. Many of the companies we acquire come with engineering teams there. It also helps that some of us senior leaders in the company are Indian. We have a little bit of a small bias to investments there. But it is competitive. Listen, we're looking to invest in engineering, and there's lots of other places we could invest. We could invest in Beijing, Shanghai. We could invest in Bangalore, Hyderabad, Pune, just Delhi. We could invest in Sofia, Eastern Europe. And as we make these choices, some of the factors I talked about are very important. And we also like the fact that there's an ecosystem, the Indian SIs and many others that are forming. Let me conclude on this chart. This is what I talked about. And as much as innovation and as much as all of the aspects that make companies successful and important, I talked about humility. And this is not talked a lot about because most of what's celebrated in society and also in the technology world is stepping over on top of each other to get to the top. Okay? And that happens in politics. It happens in the corporate world. I think one of the things that makes us special is the Gandhian philosophy of servant leadership. And I'm a big fan of that. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see I've talked a lot about that. And I think the next leaders, I was gratified to hear from Dean Lyons that that is a key factor, the way in which you've made Berkeley here special. And I love this poem. Let me end with this because I think it's highly inspirational. I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted and service was joy. Many of you probably heard this and read this poem when you're growing up, Rabindranath Tagore. It has inspired me every day. And when you apply the principles of servant leadership into the corporate world, which is almost unintuitive, because it's almost the opposite way in which a shark eats shark type of culture exists, I actually think you can actually not just be successful, but be incredibly happy. With that, thank you very much. I'll turn it back to you, Professor.
Thank you, Sanjay, for those wonderful remarks. We learned a lot. Our next speaker is a very accomplished CEO, and his bio is, if I were to read it, it'll be very, very long. So I will invite Sunil Munjal, president of AIMA, and he's also the chairman of the Hero Enterprises. A very inspiring man, getting to appreciate him more and more. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Solomon. Ambassador Ashok, Mr. Shashi Tharoor, Dean Rich Lyons, Sanjay, Rekha, my colleagues who are here from India on this visit, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a pleasure to be here this morning at an amazingly inspiring place for this discussion on US and India. Actually, both Rekha and Sanjay made my job easier. I was going to talk a little bit about AIMA and what's doing and why we are here in the Diamond Jubilee year. So thank you, Rekha, for making my job easier. And Sanjay stole half the speech I was going to give about what's going on in India and why it's a place that you should be looking at very, very carefully. In many ways, they say what goes around comes around. If you look back a little bit, and this is recorded history, that when the British came into India, India as a single nation was doing 21% world trade. And was also a very significant part of the global GDP. It's the change that has taken place in the last 370 years that for the first 50 years, we were trying to get, in the last 50 years, we were trying to get used to this new situation. Over the last 20 years or so, we've kind of woken up and said, hey, we are the guys who taught the world how to do business. If you look back, India was a leader in many, many aspects, not just in economy and trade, but in science, in technology, in healthcare, in innovation itself. We were the first country in the world to set up a university of liberal arts. We were also the first country in the world to teach students from 32 different countries. We were incidentally also the first country in the world where men and women were taught together in one university. So we've had a pretty interesting history. And in many ways, we are not a country. We are actually a civilization. Mohan was talking about this last evening, that we have a history which goes back, a recorded history, or at least discussed history, which is over 5 millennia. Some say it is 7 or 10. So I think it is because of this deep-rooted sense of culture and history that anything you hear about India, they say is true. And interestingly, at the very same time, the exact opposite is also true. We are truly not a country. We are a continent in every aspect of the world. We have 28 states, each strongly managing itself in the federal structure. We have 17 official languages and 5,000 dialects spoken across the country. If you go across India, you see people wearing different clothes, eating different cuisines, speaking different languages, and they even look different. So what is it that holds India together? What is India? It's the very idea which is unique. In some ways, Sanjay touched upon this, the culture and the values with which Indians grow up. And so very often, even we do not quite realize ourselves why we do some things in the way we do them. It's genetic. It's genuinely part of the system that we've grown up in. And while over the last 20 or 30 years, we are rapidly trying to change our economy to build it like rest of the rapidly growing economies in the world. But I have to say, in some ways, we still continue to be unique. I often get asked by friends of mine who are looking to come into India to do business. And what I've told them is, there are two kinds of foreign companies that have come into India and been successful. And I'm talking about the foreign companies now. One is companies who've found good Indian partners. And second is companies that learn to look, feel, and behave like Indian companies. And I don't mean to say this badly, because the cultural influence is so strong, because the nuances of how people behave actually change every 20 miles, that it's important to understand that if you're dealing with an Indian consumer, that there is more than just the design of the product or service that will matter. And we do have another strange quirk. Value for money is probably the most important driving factor for decisions, buying decisions across the world. In India, we have one little hurdle which comes in before that. is the benchmark pricing. In most Indians' minds, when they go to buy something, they already have a benchmark price in mind. And if anything is offered, which is slightly above this but far superior, most people will not even look at the product. And so if we can figure out how do you address this large growth market, and it is a large growth market. Actually, if you look at the region, if you look at India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, all of that, you have a quarter of humanity living there. You have per capita incomes ranging from $1,200 to $3,800 in that area. And these are clearly amongst the fastest growing economies in the world. So obviously they're being taken notice of right now. But what's interesting is they are increasingly creating policy initiatives which are making it easier to start to work in these countries. And they're also keen to attract investment from overseas. For us in India, the foreign direct investment that we're looking for is not just for money. I should tell you, the largest amount of investment that is going into India, into India's infrastructure, into India's industry, and India's growth is actually Indian money. But we do need the foreign capital, first, of course, for the money that it brings in, but more importantly, for the connections, knowledge, and to create a global network. We want to go back to being a global nation, as we were. And as you just showed, Sanjay, it is already the third largest economy in the world on PPP terms. That we will be amongst the largest economies in the world is in some sense a given. But that does not and should not make us arrogant because we have a lot of work to do. We have challenges that we've not been able to address so far. While we're able to launch over 100 satellites in one shot from one rocket, we have over 150 million people who still live in abject poverty and do not get 2 square meals a day. So we have strange challenges. It's the extreme diversity of India, which makes it both daunting, challenging, and also exciting. And with the US, we have more in common than we realize most times. A country which is diverse, and I'm talking about both now, a country which is focused on education and research, countries which are built on an extremely open democratic culture, a rule of law, a system of accounting, systems of audits. There's a whole lot of similarities in these two countries. And the US, for a long time now, has been the biggest player in the world, which has built strategic relationships based on its own needs at different points in time. India and the US had a falling out way back, but over the last 20 years or so, you see these countries increasingly getting closer and closer. Indians have a significant contribution here, as we just saw in some of the slides that you showed. And likewise, US corporations, US individuals, US research, US partnerships have become increasingly more and more important for us in India. This is a partnership which can only grow. And truly, this growth will do good not just to these two countries, but can genuinely do good for mankind. In India's history, at least in the 5,000 to 7,000 years of history, India has never attacked another nation. Of course, it's been attacked many, many times. It's absorbed all of the cultures which came in. It's a very, very inclusive culture. So if you look at Indian food, our designs, our architecture, our textiles, our fabrics, you see different shades of influences from many different parts of the world. But it is all Indian. And that is the beauty of this culture, that it's learned to embrace anything that it comes across. And US has done it brilliantly. This is a nation built on immigrants. This is a nation which is built on meritocracy. And I think there is a unique opportunity here. And I will not go into details because I'm presuming Mohan will do all of that later in the day when he will share numbers with you, that the opportunities in India are absolutely immense right now of the areas of education, on healthcare, on infrastructure, on transportation. It is almost endless. India has recently opened up defense as a sector for manufacturing in India. We already had 2 or 3 very large sectors with big multipliers like the automotive industry. We are amongst the fastest growing automotive industries in the world. We have a large established textile industry, which is a large multiplier again. We are now focused on building housing for all. There are many Indians who do not have homes. So each of our challenges and problems also presents a unique opportunity for investment, for growth, and for creating a multiplier. Because another challenge that we face right now is to be able to provide 1 million new jobs for Indians month on month, every month, at least for the next 15 years. 68% of India lives in the rural areas right now. 45% of India depends on agriculture as a primary source of income. And agriculture is contributing less and less to the GDP. While agriculture has grown, India has become the 2nd largest producer of vegetable and fruits in the world. It's the largest producer of milk in the world. We have a whole lot of agri-products that we are not just able to feed India now, which, by the way, was a problem about 50 years ago. But we are also becoming increasingly significant exporters of agri-produce, which is why sometimes we get concerned when there's a pushback on India to reduce subsidies. But when we look at the subsidies in agriculture in the highly developed nations of Europe and North America, this does become a concern for us in India. At a time when the very developed nations and the champions of the free markets, it appears, have begun to put up walls to an open marketplace. India and countries like India and China are actually pushing for a more open market today. So in some ways, as I said, what goes around comes around. And I do hope that all of us together will realize that globalization and this global network of humanity is here to stay. Whether we like it or not, whether we realize this or not, we are all connected. We are networked increasingly also through technology, but more than that, through humanity. And this is why it is important for us to learn that technology is an exciting and an amazing enabler. As Rekha said, we spent the last 3 days going to, and I'm a bit wary of saying the most innovative companies, because every time you hear of another company, it seems to be more innovative here in this part of the world. And we also said we're going to the largest innovative companies in the world. But we don't know if they were. They were absolutely amazing visits, by the way. But we still don't know whether they were the best companies. Because we went to an outfit called Plug and Play, where there were 430 little outfits doing absolutely mind-blowing stuff. So it is, I think, this individual human enterprise which is driving these corporations. And there are Americans in there are Indians in there, and there are people of every nationality in the world. So it just shows us what partnerships can do. Someone showed in one of the presentations yesterday, I think it was you, Solomon, who showed that 1 + 1, and he was showing us a case study of 2 corporations where he said 1 + 1 = 2, /no, 1 + 1 = 11. And there's an old Hindi saying, by the way, ek aur ek 11, which means if 2 individuals come together, they can have enough sense, enough ability, enough enterprise, enough energy, as much as any 11 people. And that is what we need. We need to find the positive side of these partnerships. There will, of course, be challenges. We will also compete with each other as we do. On the fringe, there will always be competition. But today, there is a possibility, while competing with each other, to figure out where is the common ground. Where do we cooperate? Where do we figure out there is a win-win for each one of us? We did this as a company in many different cases. We found that partnerships work exceedingly well. We are now doing this as a country, and this, we believe, will be amongst our most important partnerships, will be between US and India. And I think setting this conference up, thank you very much, Rekha, for doing this. Thank you for Solomon. Thank you to the Garwood Center, to Rich, to the Haas Business School and your colleagues and your team, and to UC Berkeley. We are very fortunate that we have a very diverse group of speakers here today. And I want to thank Ambassador Ashok for coming in as well. So Indian government is, in some sense, leading the charge right now. And the kind of work that's going on is pretty amazing. We have built the world's largest digital identity data bank. Today, almost every, and I'm saying almost because there's a small minuscule percentage still left, almost every Indian not just has a digital identity with 9 biometric features on this, they're also now linked electronically to a bank account, which now also has money in it. And I think the power of what technology is being used for, the setting up and creation of the India stack, which will allow education, healthcare services, banking services, payment services, all to ride on this with full security, and a whole host of other initiatives of making digital and electronic payments available to India, focusing on some of India's challenges. A lot of us used to crib about the lack of cleanliness in India. This has been turned into a people's movement, a mission called Swachh Bharat, Clean India. So there are many, many moving parts that have been put into play at the same time. So, but if you take a step back and look at the enormity of the job that has been taken up, it is quite awe-inspiring. And we hope that with the many initiatives encouraging new startups, encouraging technology, encouraging manufacturing, encouraging partnerships, and encouraging a much more open diplomatic relationship between different nations in the world, including where we have had difficult, complex relationships in our immediate neighborhood, Pakistan, with China. There are multiple initiatives on at this moment. And we do hope these will help us to create not just a better US-India relationship, but help us create a better world. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Sunil. I learned much from your talk. Very rich content there for us. There's a question from the audience. There are several questions, but there's one most relevant, and for you, Sunil, it's a question about what do you want from Americans of Indian origin who are from Western culture. They're becoming less and less in terms of knowing about the Indian culture and language. What are some of the things that, how can they help in this equation? I think it's a microphone. It'll be great if.
I'm happy to just stand and talk.
Yes.
So we were talking about this last evening, actually. There is an organization here set up by the Indian diaspora. I think what we need to do is 2 or 3 different things. One is, please ensure that your children do not lose the connection with India, with your language, with the culture. If you are connected with India, if you have family and friends back home, please ensure that you're making a regular visit to the country. You will create new friendships, and hopefully you will retain old friendships. That thread passes down to the next generation. And I think it's absolutely critical that those children who are born here and will grow up here do not lose the connect with the nation back home that their parents and forefathers came from. The second thing I think which is important is to look at the immense opportunities that India offers today. Some of you may know that India attracted the largest amount of FDI in the world last year. We got $62 billion worth of FDI, which is no mean task. So if you have a business which has the potential to reach out to India, you have an immense opportunity. I think that's something that you should look at yourself and also try and showcase this as an opportunity to others. You cannot be asking for favors. We're not asking for favors, by the way. It only works if there's a win-win on both sides. And that is something we are trying to create, is real opportunities which are sustainable and which are growth-oriented. So if you want, there are plenty of sources. AIMA will provide information for you. There are industry associations in India, like the Confederation of Indian Industry, like FICCI and ASSOCHAM, who have this as a service. You can get on the net and find ways to connect with them. The other thing I think which is important is the culture that India is known for. If we can propagate the more positive parts of our culture, because our culture, like it's not all positive, it has all kinds of stuff in there. But the culture of tolerance, the culture of humility, the culture of relationships, and aspects of spirituality that India offers, which the world in many ways is searching for, the kind of answers that the world is searching for. So I'm kind of going across the full spectrum, Solomon. I don't know if the question was directed at any one thing, but the opportunities available to us as Indians here to create a connect, not just for Indians, but also for your American friends, to show them what India can do for you and what India offers to anybody. And by the way, it's an absolutely amazing country to visit, no matter what you're interested in, whether you like rivers, deserts, mountains, heritage sites, we have temples, we have forts, and we have an absolutely amazing, rich culture of the arts that you can come in and visit. And I said this yesterday, actually, if any of you are interested in any of the arts, in December in India, in Goa, there is a massive festival of the arts from the 15th to the 22nd. So if you make your trip during the winter vacation, go to Goa. It's a great beach resort, and you can also enjoy dance, theater, and music.
Sure. So Sunil, I wanted to follow up. This is my question, and my name's Kulvinder Singh. I'm a lawyer in the Sacramento area. The concept that came from what Sanjay started with, seva, is something that the Sikhs have taken all over the world. And that's not Indian anymore, it's international. And when you were just doing the promo here in Goa, I'll do the promo on Yuba City. Come and see our festival when we have celebration of Guru Granth Sahib's Guru Gaddi Day, and that's the first weekend in November. The main question that was the second question that I posed was, we're less and less Indian. I was here when I was 4, and I'm a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for 21 years. I don't consider myself Indian. I consider myself of Indian origin. And so that was where I was going. I mean, we can all visit places. For me, it's a lot easier to visit Yuba City than it is to get on an airplane.
True. That's why I said there's a need to make the effort. So once you create that connect, you will then find this amazing set of opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sanjay, do you have any thoughts that you may want to say on this one, and your own thoughts, because you have such a rich history of coming?
I have, obviously a selfish reason. I endorse everything that Sunil said. My parents are 78 and 75. They live in Bangalore. And, I go to visit them often. I have significant investment in that, and I love being there. So I think, you can't stay connected if you're not actually physically there. So I encourage you, for me and my children who were born here, I want them to know my roots. And for them, every year, they look forward to it. We make it once a year. And I think it's also very special, especially for those of us who live in the Silicon Valley. This place can be a bubble, and the rest of the world is very different. It's good for us to see different parts of the world, so I endorse everything he said, Sunil said. And of course, if there are ways by which that can be replicated here in the Silicon Valley, that's fine too. It's not to say you have to go there, but there is something special about actually getting on a plane, being there and visiting and keeping yourself connected, especially, I would say, for the next generation. Our children need to know our roots just as much as we have experienced it ourselves.
I'm just going to add one thing. Our greatest export, by the way, has been Indians. And I say that in all seriousness, by the way. If you look at pretty much across the spectrum in technology, in healthcare, amongst IT professionals, doctors, lawyers, in North America, I'm told the most successful single ethnic amongst the most successful doctors in North America is Indians. If there were no Indians, by the way, the NHS in the UK would completely collapse. So you folks who are here from India are our brain bank outside of India. You are part of the heart and soul. So whether you realize or not, you carry a bit of India with you wherever you go. And which is also why I think it's important to remain connected. So this kind of feeds on itself. It enriches the Indianness of Indians in and outside India. And as far as the economy is concerned, we will do well. India is producing some amazing companies. There are global giant companies. I see many of my friends sitting here. Pramod runs a company which is one of the leading companies today in the world. Arun is as much an American as he is now an Indian. So, Dempo runs an amazing set of businesses. So what India is doing is actually pretty interesting right now. But it's not enough. We have to, and we need to do more. And which is why the connect is very important for us.
Thank you. Thank you, Sunil. Thank you, Sanjay, for those comments. Our next speaker is Ambassador Ashok Venkatesan, a great friend of the Haas School and also UC Berkeley. He supported me in many ways. He was in my classroom when I taught smart cities, a great lecturer, and also he was helping me now with smart villages programs and those classes. And he also came to India with me on the Smart Village project, so very supportive of what we're doing here at Haas. Ashok, thank you so much for coming, and please address.
Thank you very much, Solomon, for those very kind words. Dr. Shashi Tharoor, Member of Parliament, Mr. Sunil Munjal, President AIMA and Chairman Hero Corporate Service, Chancellor Christ, Dean Lyons, Professor Henry Chesborough, Professor Solomon Darwin, Mrs. Rekha Sethi, Mr. Sanjay Poonen, friends, and distinguished invitees. In the history of India-US relations, there's never been a more fortuitous convergence of economic, strategic, and geopolitical interests of our two countries, as is evidenced today. We therefore have a unique opportunity available for US companies to grow their business in India and in the other countries of the subcontinent and beyond. By 2020, India will emerge as the youngest country with an average age of 29. To achieve swift growth with equity and position ourselves among developed economies in the next 15 years, we need to quadruple our per capita income through sustained double-digit growth over this period. New technologies, capital, products, organizational and management skills are needed to provide a strong impetus to economic development. To bring the benefits of development to those at the bottom of the pyramid, we need to increase the share of manufacturing in the GDP from the current 16%. We are just 16 as compared to 45, which in case of China. In the first stage, our target is to increase from 16% to 25% by 2022. This will require large investments. We hope to get a significant proportion from foreign direct investment. The Make in India initiative seeks to attract investment into manufacturing by introducing a business-friendly regulatory environment, fostering innovation, enhancing skill development, protecting IPRs, and building the best-in-class manufacturing infrastructure. We are steadily improving the ease of doing business. We have initiated reforms to simplify, rationalize, and amalgamate existing labor laws, reduce corporate and other taxes, implement a new goods and services tax, which has just come in on stream, that will subsume several central and state taxes, passed a new bankruptcy law, and created Invest India to guide, assist, and handhold investors during the entire life cycle of their business. 25 sectors have been identified as priorities, including automobiles and components, connectivity infrastructure, defense, food processing, renewable energy, thermal power, electronics, and space. 92% of the sectors now permit 100% foreign ownership of the companies established in India. In partnership with Google, Wi-Fi hotspots have been set up in 400 railway stations and also on running trains. General Electric and Alstom are building factories for producing diesel and electric locomotives. Contracts for major infrastructure projects are on a global tender basis. India began imports of shale gas from Texas in June this year, and we are working with the United States in adopting HELE, high efficiency, low emissions technologies for coal. We are building new nuclear plants in Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Rajasthan, and new plants with the United States, French, and Japanese companies are on the anvil. We have an ambitious plan to add 100 gigawatts of solar and 75 gigawatts of wind and biomass and other renewables. In February this year, India launched 104 satellites in one PSLV rocket. 96 of these satellites were from the United States, 88 were from a San Francisco-based company. We imported $18 billion worth of defense equipment from the United States last year. With foreign investment of up to 49% permitted now in the defense sector, US companies like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and Sikorsky have tied up with Indian counterparts, including Tata. Industrial licenses have been granted to private Indian players for defense manufacturing. Many of these companies are tying up with major defense suppliers to manufacture products under license. India has the highest passenger traffic growth rate in the world in civil aviation, and Airbus and Boeing estimate that we will need 1,610 and 1,740 jets, respectively, over the next 20 years. We are building new airports. We currently have only 75, but we want to reactivate another 350 unused airstrips. The investment in airport infrastructure alone and in aviation services is expected to be around $120 billion over the next decade. Aircraft maintenance, repair, and overhauling business in India is a business opportunity for investors, since it can handle not only overhauling of Indian aircraft, which are currently serviced abroad, but also of all aircraft in the region of Asia. The automotive sector, which contributes 7% to the GDP currently, is the third largest market globally. We hope to foster adoption of hybrid and electric vehicles. We have just announced a policy of wanting to go all electric by 2030 and encourage their manufacturing in India through demand and supply side incentives and promoting battery technologies and charging infrastructure. We have provided several tax and other incentives to startup companies. Digital India is leveraging the internet to make available bank accounts through mobile phones. We have over 1 billion mobile phones now, of which over 250 million are smartphones. The world's largest biometric identity system, Aadhaar, is now having over 1.2 billion registered users. The e-commerce industry is expected to reach 120 billion by 2020. We will have 100 million online shoppers by the end of this year. The real-time availability of services on mobile phones and online platforms enables electronic and cashless transactions. So many Indians are leapfrogging from cash to digital payments without ever having to use a credit card. US corporates in the medical industry space are seeing value in developing cost-effective ECG and diagnostic machines and medical equipment in India. India's retail market of over $600 billion is gradually being opened up to outside investment. 51% foreign direct investment is permitted in multi-brand retail, with back-end infrastructure investment towards processing, manufacturing, design improvement, quality control, packaging, logistics, storage, warehouse, and agriculture market produce infrastructure. Less than 10% of Indian food products undergo processing. The annual value of harvest and post-harvest losses of major agricultural produce in India is of the order of $14 billion. This is a huge area of opportunity for US companies, especially in cold storage and cold chains, farm-to-market, hub-and-spoke chains, and value addition. For a country with historical and tourist attractions in abundance, we have very low numbers of quality hotel rooms. this is another major opportunity for foreign investors. The increase in manufacturing will see an increase in jobs. We have 12 million young people emerging from universities and colleges every year. Major corporates are not happy with the skill sets of a majority of our graduates. Skill India seeks to train college students to equip them for jobs with higher competency levels. This is especially necessary as machines on the shop floor take over routine and repetitive assembly systems. Both corporates which have in-house training and specialized training institutions, universities, and academics from the United States have an opportunity to participate in Skill India. The costs of training can be held down by training local trainers who will disseminate to the larger mass of people, as well as online courses which are now possible to reach a wider audience at low cost. To provide affordable housing and world-class amenities to those employed in new factories, 100 smart cities are being built on either brown or greenfield basis. Smart energy, water, ICT, buildings, and transportation grids are also coming up to provide quality living for the inhabitants. The Clean India initiative, Swachh Bharat, to which Mr. Munjal alluded, sees huge investments for sewage treatment and water purification infrastructure, as well as waste recycling. This, again, is a huge opportunity for US firms. US companies which manufacture products in India will find a ready market in the countries of the subcontinent. The similarity of cultures will make it easier to sell these products to 450 million people in the SAARC region, and potentially many millions more in the countries to the west and east. India is a $2.45 trillion economy and is among the world's fastest growing economies. Foreign companies, especially from the United States and Europe, tend to focus on the 400 million strong middle class with living standards comparable to those in the West who can afford their goods. But there is 900 million others in the rural areas who are less economically endowed, and this population is highly aspirational. They represent a massive electorate who cannot be ignored for long. A beginning in including these people into the mainstream of high technology is being made by the Garwood Center for Corporate Innovation of the Haas School of Business, University of California, Berkeley. On the encouragement and with the support of Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, Dr. Solomon Darwin of UC Berkeley has set up a smart village project beginning with his native village in Mori in Andhra Pradesh. Dr. Darwin was inspired by Garwood Center co-executive director, Professor Henry Chesborough, the father of open innovation here at Haas. The Smart Village is a community empowered by digital technologies and open innovation platforms to access global markets, which must be scalable and sustainable. Last December, in the presence of Chief Minister Naidu and the Chancellor of UC Berkeley, corporate executives, government officials, and over 30,000 people, Mori was declared India's first fully digitized village. Professor Darwin has inspired corporates to come to Mori Village, identify the pain points of the villagers, and see how their technologies can address these pain points. The technologies are spread across the spectrum of developmental activities. They include IoT solutions for precision agriculture, telemedicine and water purification, e-commerce for goldsmiths, potters, fisher folk, weavers, and cashew farmers, yield enhancement for shrimp cultivators, and resurrecting dead paddy fields with digital technologies. Other key solutions include packaged sewage treatment plants and cold storage facilities. The technologies and adaptations will vary from village to village, as will the needs and requirements of the constituents. Over 30 corporates were in the event in December. That number has now swollen to over 50 and includes institutions like NASA. The USP is the creation of a business model wherein the corporates work out ways in which to generate revenue streams from their technologies adapted to the village. In the second phase, the Chief Minister has awarded 466 villages to be completed by next year. Successful implementation of this will see scaling up to 36,000 villages across the state of Andhra Pradesh, and then perhaps across all India. The sky is the limit. There are 640,000 villages all over India. The margins may be small, but the technology is scalable, and when you realize the product can potentially reach 900 million people, the returns look very attractive. The unique approach of using corporates to fund innovation with their eye on future gain builds a scalable, sustainable economic model. Just a little over a week ago, I was invited to speak at the Open Innovation Forum at Vijayawada, organized by Professor Darwin. Chief Minister Naidu attended the forum. The audience of corporates, government leaders, and students also heard inspiring remarks on open innovation from Professor Chesborough, who spoke to us through Skype. When this innovative model is scaled up, it will be a true game changer which can transform rural India. It could be replicated in markets outside India, beginning with the neighboring countries of the subcontinent. Our dream for inclusive development may well be much closer than we thought. Thank you very much, and thank you, Haas Business School and AIMA.
Thank you, Ambassador Ashok. That is like a PhD thesis in economics for us. Thank you. Very rich and very insightful. I'm just going to offer a few closing remarks. What I teach at Berkeley here is business models and business models in emerging economies. How do large companies can prosper and make money in India? It needs new business models. And I think that is a secret to unlock growth in the subcontinent. I'm teaching, as I'm working in prototyping villages in India where 70% of our people live, I'm teaching the global brands how to come up with business models where they can prosper, but also deliver value and affordability to the poor man. And that is happening now because India can offer this enormous scale. It's a large untapped market. There are 8 useless things in this world, 8 useless things. They will remain useless unless we humans take action to turn these useless things into value. The first useless thing is data. Data is useless unless it is converted into information. Data shows patterns and trends to provide, and that converts into information. The law of large numbers says many data points behave in a predictable fashion, so we can create some value there. The second useless thing is information. If data is useless unless it is converted into information, information is also useless unless it is converted into knowledge. Knowledge tells you what to do. Knowledge is also useless unless it flows. Knowledge sitting in your head doesn't do me any good unless it flows from you to me and to others and rest of the world. Knowledge needs to flow. Being resident in one place is useless. Knowledge tells you what to do. Knowledge flows are also useless unless they create something new, like technology, that enables you to do something. Technology is useless without a business model. There's so much technology around us that's just useless. There's no business model to create value for you, the company, or the end user. Business models are also useless unless they are scalable. They offer you scalability, offers security, and also lowers risk. Scalability is also useless if it destroys sustainability. What good is it? You make money and you scale and you pollute the air and the water and the earth. So scalability and sustainability provides you prosperity for the long run. Sustainability is also useless unless it improves the happiness of people, gives you purpose. That is why we exist. All this knowledge flows and technology and information, what good is it if it doesn't make people happy? And that is where we need to end. Business models today and of the future need to be built on knowledge flows. They are the ones that will be sustained. This means it requires open innovation. Business models built on knowledge flows will prosper and dominate the future landscape. Knowledge should flow in every direction, inside out, outside in, upside down, in every way. And without this, open innovation cannot happen to build adaptable business models to justify their existence. We need to move away from this whole thing. I'm working in India with these large companies. They're always about minimum viable product. You know, that's a good thing, but that doesn't work anymore. We need to move from minimum viable product to minimum viable ecosystem. This requires open innovation. Ecosystems by their very nature eliminate costs, save time, reduce risk, and promote speed to market. Several months ago, I was in India. I was in this village with executives from 3 firms, Cisco, Ericsson, and a small startup in India that is trying to empower the shrimp farmer so that he can, on his cell phone, he can read the water levels and the pH levels and the DO and all of that of his pond so he can prosper. And these 2 companies, both of them want to compete. And I said to them, you know, let's sit down together. You know, let us create an ecosystem. Cisco, you add value over here. You add value over here. Let us not live in silos. Let's put all of our knowledge and capabilities together and create an impregnable ecosystem that would eliminate costs and duplication, add value to the end user, the farmer. And that is happening in India, not in Silicon Valley. When you have these 20 or so Silicon Valley companies coming and living in villages, engaging in co-innovation with the farmers, new things are happening. Ecosystems are being built that are more sustainable to develop a great nation. So with those, as we engage over here with the next remainder of this day, let us start a movement and let's take some action and transform this world to be a better place and deliver value to the poor man. Thank you, and God bless you.